My name is Sarah. I had always dreamed of a career where I could truly make a difference, especially for those who needed it most. After graduating as a certified nurse, I found my calling in elderly care. I secured a position at Serene Gardens Elderly Care, a facility renowned for its tranquil environment, state-of-the-art amenities, and glowing testimonials from families. It promised dignity, comfort, and peace for its residents in their golden years. I genuinely believed I was joining a team dedicated to compassionate, high-quality care. But beneath the polished floors, the carefully arranged flower beds, and the gentle smiles of the staff, Serene Gardens harbored a chilling secret. Our primary mission wasn't truly about the well-being of the residents. It was about maximizing profit, often at the expense of their dignity, health, and finances. Mrs. Albright, the facility director, a woman with an impeccably neat bun and a smile that never quite reached her eyes, had a favorite saying: "Care is a business, Sarah. And in business, every penny counts." My initial duties seemed straightforward: assisting residents with daily needs, administering medication, and ensuring their comfort. However, the first red flag was the severe understaffing. Despite the advertised one-on-one personalized care, we were perpetually short-staffed. A single nurse might be responsible for 30 or more residents, many of whom required extensive assistance. This meant rushed meals, delayed bathroom breaks, infrequent repositioning, leading to bed sores, and painfully long waits for help with even basic needs. Residents often soiled themselves because staff couldn't get to them in time, leading to humiliation and increased risk of infection. How are we supposed to provide quality care with so few people? I once asked a senior nurse, exhausted after a particularly hectic shift. She just sighed, her eyes weary. "We're not, Sarah. We're supposed to look like we are." Mrs. Albright cuts corners everywhere. Fewer staff, more profit. It's the Serene Gardens way. Then came the issue of financial exploitation and hidden fees. Families paid exorbitant monthly fees for what they believed was premium care. However, Serene Gardens had a labyrinthine system of hidden charges. Activity fees for events that rarely happened, special dietary supplement fees for generic meal additions, personal hygiene assistance fees for basic tasks like showering, and even linen refresh fees for changing bedsheets. These charges often went unnoticed by overwhelmed families, inflating bills by hundreds, sometimes thousands, of dollars each month. Elderly residents, many with cognitive impairments, were often coerced into signing additional service agreements they didn't understand. I remember an elderly gentleman, Mr. Henderson, whose family was paying for a daily cognitive stimulation program. I never saw him attend any such program. When I asked about it, a senior aide simply told me, "Oh, that's just a line item. We just give him a crossword puzzle sometimes, counts as stimulation. Meanwhile, his family was being charged hundreds for this non-existent service. The agency was bleeding the residents' savings dry, one hidden fee at a time. The most egregious deception involved the systematic neglect and overmedication of residents. Due to understaffing, many residents who required constant attention or had behavioral issues were often neglected or, even worse, overmedicated to make them more manageable. Instead of genuine engagement or specialized care plans, sedatives were frequently used as a chemical restraint. Residents would spend their days in a drowsy stupor, their eyes vacant, their vitality slowly fading. It was a horrifying sight. The chilling realization dawned on me. Serene Gardens wasn't a haven, it was a golden cage. The tranquil environment, the polished facade, the promise of dignity, they were all part of an elaborate charade. Every time I helped a frail resident, knowing the neglect they endured, I felt a cold knot in my stomach. The golden cage wasn't just about financial fraud. It was about systematically stripping away the autonomy and humanity of the elderly, turning their final years into a nightmare of neglect, solitude, and silent suffering, all for the sake of boundless profit. The pervasive understaffing and the predatory financial practices at Serene Gardens were deeply disturbing. But as I spent more time within its seemingly tranquil walls, I uncovered a much more insidious and heartbreaking reality: the widespread emotional and psychological abuse of residents and the systematic cover-up of severe neglect. I began to notice that certain residents, particularly those who were less mobile or had more pronounced cognitive decline, were often ignored or treated with callous indifference. While physical abuse was rare and usually quickly addressed, due to fear of legal repercussions, emotional and verbal abuse was rampant and insidious. Staff members, overwhelmed and burnt out, would often snap at residents, dismiss their complaints, or even mock them behind their backs. Requests for help were met with sighs of annoyance or prolonged delays. Many residents were left isolated in their rooms for hours, craving human interaction, only to be met with coldness when a staff member finally appeared. Mrs. Davies keeps asking for her Bible. I once mentioned to a colleague, finding the elderly woman distressed. My colleague rolled her eyes. "Oh, she always does that. Just tell her it's being cleaned. She'll forget in 5 minutes. Less hassle." The dehumanization was chilling. These were not just patients, they were individuals with pasts, fears, and emotions, being systematically stripped of their dignity. Then came the issue of unreported injuries and falsified records. Due to the severe understaffing and rushed care, accidents were frequent. Falls, bed sores worsening into open wounds, and medication errors were common occurrences. However, instead of reporting these incidents accurately and transparently to families or regulatory bodies, we were often instructed by Mrs. Albright to minimize them in reports or omit them entirely. Minor injuries would be listed as unexplained bruises, and serious falls might be attributed to sudden onset dizziness rather than inadequate supervision. The aim was to maintain Serene Gardens' pristine reputation and avoid investigations that could jeopardize their lucrative licenses. I recall a painful incident involving Mr. Chin, a gentle man with severe arthritis. He fell during a transfer from his bed to his wheelchair because only one overwhelmed aide was available to help him, instead of the required 2. He broke his hip. In the incident report, Mrs. Albright insisted we write that Mr. Chin slipped unexpectedly during independent ambulation. The blatant lie made me sick to my stomach. His family was devastated, but they never knew the full truth of how it happened. The most egregious deception involved the systematic diversion of donated supplies and resources for personal gain. Serene Gardens frequently received generous donations from charities, community groups, and even residents' families, things like new medical equipment, therapeutic supplies, or even luxury items like blankets and personal care products. However, these items rarely reached the residents. Instead, they would mysteriously disappear, only to be found later being used by staff, sold online, or simply stockpiled in a locked supply room while residents made do with worn-out, insufficient supplies. The irony of families paying exorbitant fees while their donated items were stolen was a bitter pill to swallow. The pressure to remain silent, to be a passive observer in this systematic neglect, became unbearable. My colleagues, many of whom were good people but terrified of losing their jobs, simply rationalized it as the way things are. "You want to keep your job, Sarah. You learn to look the other way," they'd advise. But I knew the truth. Looking the other way made me complicit. My sleep became restless, haunted by the vacant eyes of overmedicated residents, the silent tears of those longing for a kind word, and the cold, calculating smile of Mrs. Albright. I started seeing the tranquil gardens not as a place of peace, but as a facade for suffering, and the gentle smiles of some staff members not as genuine warmth, but as masks for indifference. The golden cage was no longer just a metaphor. It was a horrifying reality. A systematic stripping away of dignity, turning vulnerable lives into a commodity for profit, all hidden behind a veneer of compassionate care. I knew I couldn't continue. The thought of walking through those polished halls, knowing the unspoken horrors they contained, became a torment. The unbearable weight of complicity in Serene Gardens' systematic neglect and abuse was crushing me. Every vacant stare, every silent plea for help, every hidden bruise, they gnawed at my conscience. I knew I couldn't be a part of this any longer. My oath as a nurse, my very humanity, demanded I act. The final breaking point arrived when a new resident, an elegant old woman named Mrs. Peterson, was admitted. She was lucid, articulate, and fiercely independent, but her children insisted she needed 24/7 care due to a recent fall. Within a week, I saw her spirit begin to dwindle. She was frequently left alone, her calls for help unanswered, her requests for specific activities ignored. One day, I found her weeping silently in her room, struggling to reach a book that had fallen just out of her grasp. "They just leave me here, Sarah," she whispered, her voice choked with tears. They forget I'm even alive. Witnessing her rapid decline, and the cold indifference of the staff, snapped something inside me. I had to expose this. That evening, I didn't go home. Instead, I spent hours documenting every incident I could remember, dates of neglect, names of residents affected, details of suspicious billing practices, and even photos of unkempt rooms or untreated bedsores I had secretly taken. It was a risky move, but the thought of remaining silent was far more terrifying. The next morning, I walked straight into Mrs. Albright's impeccably tidy office. She was reviewing financial reports, her smile as fixed and artificial as ever. "Mrs. Albright," I stated, my voice shaking slightly, but firm and clear. "I'm resigning, and I'm going to report everything." She slowly looked up, her smile not faltering, but her eyes hardening to flint. "Resigning, Sarah? And talking? You think it's that easy? You're a fool. You signed confidentiality agreements. You have no idea how influential Serene Gardens is. Your career, your license, your reputation, it will all be gone. You'll be blacklisted from every healthcare facility. And remember, dear, we know where you live. People who cross us have a way of finding their lives suddenly, dramatically ruined." She leaned back, a chilling, humorless chuckle escaping her lips. "Be smart, Sarah. Be silent." Her threats were terrifying, a cold hand squeezing my heart. But the image of Mrs. Peterson's tear-streaked face and the countless victims languishing in this golden cage gave me an unyielding resolve. "I don't care," I said, meeting her gaze squarely. "I won't be silent anymore. Not for you. Not for anyone." I turned and walked out, leaving behind the gleaming awards, the deceptive brochures, and the suffocating atmosphere of institutionalized neglect. I didn't look back. I left my ID badge on the reception desk, shedding the last vestiges of Serene Gardens Elderly Care. I knew the fight ahead would be long and dangerous, but I had already taken the first, most crucial step. It's been a year since I left. I'm now actively working with a nonprofit advocacy group for elder rights, helping to investigate and expose fraudulent and abusive care facilities. The work is emotionally draining and often frustrating, but every time we help a family get justice, every time we shut down a predatory facility, I feel like I'm finally fulfilling the promise I once made to myself, to truly provide care and protect the vulnerable. Yet, the shadows of Serene Gardens still linger. Every time I see a polished nursing home brochure, every time I hear a story of a family struggling to find good care, a cold dread washes over me. The faces of the elderly whose dignity was stripped away, whose savings were drained, whose last years were spent in silent suffering, they are the true ghosts of the golden cage. Haunting reminders of the dark underbelly where compassion is traded for profit, and the promise of care becomes a terrifying prison. My experience in the elder care industry revealed a terrifying truth. The very places designed to protect our most vulnerable can become their greatest threat. Unscrupulous facilities prey on your love for your elders, your trust in institutions, and your desperate need for reliable care, turning their last precious years into a source of immense profit, often at their ultimate expense. So, how can you protect your loved ones from the golden cage? Always remember to thoroughly research any facility you're considering. Look for independent reviews. Check their licensing and inspection reports with local regulatory bodies, and investigate any complaints filed against them. Make unannounced visits frequently and at varying times to observe daily operations, staff-to-resident ratios, and resident well-being. Read every clause of any contract carefully before signing, especially those related to fees, services, and conditions for discharge. If possible, seek independent legal advice. Communicate regularly with your loved one about their experiences and pay attention to subtle changes in their mood, health, or behavior. Document everything. Keep records of visits, conversations, and any concerns. And most importantly, if you suspect any form of neglect, abuse, or financial exploitation, trust your instincts and report it immediately to the appropriate authorities. Your loved one's dignity, safety, and well-being are too important to risk on a false promise. If Sarah's story made you look at elder care a little differently, remember to like this video, share this crucial warning with everyone you know, and subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another stark revelation. We'll continue to expose the hidden dangers in every profession. Stay vigilant, stay safe, and remember, not every serene garden offers genuine care.